Hey guys, hello and welcome or welcome back to my channel. This is Kshitij, and on this channel we talk about robotics, research and academia. In today's video, we are talking about the million-dollar question, is PhD the right choice for you? But as opposed to giving you the answer myself, I'll be walking you through an introspection exercise. What you're seeing on my screen is a worksheet that has a few questions that you should think about. The questions can be rated from 1 star to 5 stars, and eventually you get the idea and you can decide on the final verdict whether or not you are cut out for doing a PhD. The purpose of this exercise is not to discourage anyone from pursuing a PhD, but to give you the tools so that you could make educated decisions before you set out on starting the journey through your PhD. The PhD is a very long, demanding, and tiring journey, so you should get on with it for all the right reasons. And this exercise will help you. So when going through this exercise, you should be very honest to yourself because your career choices depend on this. Also note that this is a general introspection exercise, not specific to any particular domain. So whatever is the specific requirement for your domain, specialized skills such as being able to perform laboratory experiments, being able to program, computer literacy, etc. I am assuming that you have those specific skills or would be willing to acquire those by the time you start applying for the PhD positions. So let's get started. The questions in this list are in no particular order, but we'll walk you through one by one. So how well can you manage your time? Doing a PhD requires you to be an efficient multitasker. Now, a multitasker, as opposed to common belief, does not mean that you start doing 20 different tasks at the same time. It means you're able to switch your brain between tasks to dedicate your thoughts and your energy to a particular task, unplug and replug into another task, make some progress there, and then continue this for across different tasks to make staggered progress. It doesn't mean you're doing 20 different things at the same time, but it does require you to be an efficient multitasker, which means you should be very good with time management skills. If you are struggling with procrastination and you are not really sure whether or not you're able to manage your time, watch the video in the I button above where we talk about how to manage time and overcome procrastination. How easily do you get distracted? There will be a lot of distractors during your journey through your PhD, and you need to be able to learn to turn them down and stay focused. If you can easily get distracted, your mind would be wavering quite a bit and your progress would suffer. Self-motivation is another important attribute of a PhD scholar because when things get tough, you will find yourself in your own fight as being your own cheerleader. And you should be able to self-motivate yourself to keep on going and overcome the tough times to get through to the other side. Being able to curate the big picture is also essential because unless you see what the big picture is, you would not have a clarity of what your goal is and where is it that you want to go. In lack of such a clarity, every step that you would be making would appear to be certain progress, but you wouldn't be able to tell whether it's a progress in the right direction or just some arbitrary step that you've taken in this whole vast space around you. Being able to transition between macro and micro stages. So if you're able to view the big picture, often people think of it as one of two ways, the bottom-up approach or top-down approach. So they start with the big picture and they break it down, or they start with small blocks and club it up together. Doing a PhD often requires you to switch between the two approaches, which means you can't stick to one or the other. This is how you get new perspectives, and the problem is sometimes you might end up breaking down the pieces too small, or while putting them back up, you might get like a flawed version of the big picture where you actually want it to go. So course correction is only possible if you're able to switch between the two. Having an analytical mindset helps you identify the research gaps. If you haven't watched our video on how to identify research gaps, what they are and what are their pitfalls, I'll link it up in the I button above. But it's through analysis of what's out there, you're able to identify what has not been done and what are the limitations of the current state of the art. State of the art, this word can be very frightening. State of the art needs to be challenged if you want your work to be respected and to be considered as the recent advances in that direction. So you need to have a knack for challenging the status quo. Doing a PhD also requires a lot of sacrifices. This could come in the form of you losing your sleep over it, not having time to eat properly, not having time to socialize, staying away from your family, or a whole bunch of other sacrifices that you would have to make sure that your progress doesn't suffer during the PhD. Are you comfortable with being uncomfortable like that? One of the biggest fears of early stage researchers is the fear of the unknown. How well can you tackle the uncertainty and ambiguity, which is very omnipresent in the field of PhDs? As you read more and more, you would explore what is it that you don't know. But in the early days, since you don't know the expanse of your domain, it's very common to be frightened by the unknown. Oftentimes during your PhD, you'll be required to make numerous decisions, whether or not to submit a paper, whether or not your manuscript is ready for submission, whether or not the idea is good enough, whether or not you should continue. You will be asking yourself this question a million times during your journey because it's a long, strenuous road ahead of you. So do you make decisions based on emotions, or are you a rational thinker? And which do you think is going to benefit you through your journey in your PhD? Being able to summarize the content that you have read and are being presented is another essential attribute of a PhD scholar. You're going to end up reading a lot of things and taking up a lot of stimuli from the fellows around you. But unless you're able to churn it down and draw conclusions out of it, you'd be swimming in knowledge that is so vast that's going to start to bother you sooner or later. You will have no idea whether or not the information you have in your head is of any use or not. And if the information is just taking up space in your brain, that is going to start to bother you and add to the fear of the unknown. Can you say no? This is another essential trait because not every idea that comes to your mind is worth pursuing. And you need to be able to say no to the ideas that either divert you from your progress towards your goal or are not really that relevant at this particular point in time. This would mean some of the ideas either stay in your head, end up at your desk, or even get thrown in the bin. So, are you sure you can take it? PhD is a long, strenuous road ahead of you. There would be time where you would be losing motivation. It's normal, you are human, not every day brings same emotions with it. Things happen in your personal life, things happen in your professional life. But can you stay persistent and persevere for the entire tenure of your PhD? When you start with a PhD, until you have had your first rejection, this is something the students don't really prepare for. Rejections can come in different forms, such as getting your manuscript rejected, getting your idea rejected, getting your hypothesis rejected, or something so big as getting your entire thesis rejected. Being able to deal with rejections is something that is a part and parcel of the package of doing a PhD, and you should ask yourself, how well do you deal with rejections? Doing a PhD essentially requires you to work both solo and in a team. So you should be comfortable with flying solo and working as a member of a team, making sure that the entire team works together in unison. Oftentimes, people are either comfortable working solo or always look out for a team so that they could depend on other people to make the decisions for them. As a PhD research scholar, being able to pick one or the other is not always ideal because you have to adapt to situations. Sometimes you are better off on your own because you're already an expert in that area, so you can make faster progress that way. But other times you would want to depend on a team so you could divide and conquer. So make sure you're able to understand whether or not you can fit in both shoes. How proactive are you with networking? Being able to network is one of your important assets. Networking not only just with other fellow early stage researchers, but also with your seniors such as postdocs, senior postdocs, research fellows, professors, and beyond. You would want to be able to have your network to depend on so that you can get more stimuli. For instance, if you're looking for new ideas, you can ask for other people to explain the pain points and address how your research can help them. How much do you love reading? We have discussed this time and again, especially in the video on how to grow, plan, and manage your literature review database, that you are going to end up reading tons and tons of papers because that is what is required for you to reduce the fear of the unknown and to understand what is it that you don't know. If you don't love reading, you should ask yourself again, is PhD the right choice for you? Can you cross-fertilize knowledge? Being a maverick thinker and being able to identify patterns in chaos is something that is going to be an essential weapon in your arsenal. Now, the way this works is if you're solving a problem in your domain, there are certain tools in other domains that might be used for different applications, but if you're a maverick thinker, you'd be able to figure out if that tool applies to the problem you're trying to solve. If you're able to show new use cases of the tools from other domains and cross-fertilize the knowledge contribution becomes yours to have. Do you have the ability to plan and execute the project by yourself? Oftentimes in a PhD, your supervisor would be there for lightweight support, but it is for you to decide how to plan, how to go about it, and how to execute the plan you have come up with, and how to make course corrections along the way. How well do you think you can do these? Are you doing the PhD for yourself or to impress your friends, your family, your neighbors, your cousins, or your friends at school? What is the main motivator for doing a PhD? Remember that if you don't do the PhD because you want to do it for yourself, motivation can waver and you have ups and downs during the PhD, and soon enough, you're going to find yourself in a pickle if you did not start and finish the PhD for yourself. Oftentimes, people try to do a PhD as a way to secure citizenship. Ask yourself this: is the trouble of doing a PhD really the ideal way that you want to get to a citizenship? Is that really the optimal motivator for doing a PhD? Are you doing this for prestige? Being able to add the title or the prefix of a doctor in front of your name is something that comes towards the end of the journey, but is that something you should think of as a starting point of your journey? Does this help you level up in life? Think of your current situation in life, your current professional standing. What is it that is stopping you to level up from that status to the one above? Is PhD the right stepping stone to get you there? Or are you doing it just because there's nothing else to think of and you're using it as a mechanism to invest your time at this moment? Are you good at articulating your thoughts? As a scholar, the more you read, the more ideas you have in your head, but unless you're able to articulate, neither your team nor your supervisor would be able to understand what's cooking in your head. And if you can't put down your thoughts in a manuscript, it would be very likely that you would not be able to write good quality manuscripts and then keep facing rejections down the line. So how well are you able to articulate your thoughts for others to understand, and how well can you convince them that what is it that you're proposing is worth pursuing? Can you switch between hobbies and works? It is often said that during a PhD, you would have limited to no social life, limited to no time to pursue your hobbies. But sometimes after you've achieved some success, you need to shut your brain from work, switch to pursuing some hobbies to rejuvenate. As a researcher, it might be difficult because if you have a question stuck in your head, your brain keeps thinking about the question, so it's difficult to zone out. But are you able to do something like that? Because that might help you refresh your brain and come back with a fresh perspective to tackle the problem better. Are you willing to pick up new skills on the fly? Now, when you're starting out with your PhD in the early days, there's only so much you would know and so much you can anticipate about what is it that you would need during the tenure of your PhD. Some of the skills are assumed that you would have. Some of the skills are more advanced that you would require to have picked up during the journey. How willing are you to pick up those skills on the fly? Now, these were just some of the questions that I would request any early stage researcher to think through very carefully and honestly and label them ranking from stars 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest score for each of these questions. Towards the end, mark the number of stars you would give as the final verdict. The higher the number of stars, the more likely it is that PhD is the right choice for you. Remember, I used the word likely. There are still other factors to consider before you pursue a PhD, such as the country you're about to pursue in, the finances, etc. So think it through before you start with the journey of your PhD. PhD is a long road ahead of you. It requires determination, firm belief, clarity of goals, and all the right reasons for starting and finishing the journey. I do hope this introspection exercise helps you out to determine whether PhD is the right choice for you, and please feel free to like and share this video with other early stage researchers who are about to start on their journey. It would also mean a lot to me if you could consider subscribing to my channel and hitting the bell notification so that as soon as the next video goes live, you're notified and you can follow along with the journey. Hope you have a nice day.